Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Middle School Educators Understanding the Universal Design for Learning workshop. Before we officially start, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Josie, and I will be the host of this workshop today and for the rest of the week. I am a school librarianship student currently attending the University of Buffalo. I have worked in libraries before and with both school staff and students. I look forward to working with you and hope after these 3 sessions you will all walk away feeling confident in the universal design for learning and also understanding ways that you could implement it in your own classroom. Just a quick heads up. This workshop will be formatted in 3 unique sessions that will take place at 3 p.m. after the school day on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this week. Additionally, the recording of the presentation will be uploaded to YouTube with any extra material you might need if you want to do the workshop another time. You can see in front of you that there is a handout for each person. Each session you'll receive a new handout that includes highlights from the session, a space to take notes, and any activities you may need to do. The goal is for you to have a 3-page concise artifact that highlights things that are important for you to know after the workshop. If you are taking the workshop remotely, the worksheets will be included in the video description. Now let's jump right in. This is Session 1, our UDL overview. As middle school educators, you guys are lucky enough to work with students who are at a very transitional time in their life. This transition can oftentimes be exciting, but also scary, for both you and the student. Many students are transitioning from elementary school to middle school or are getting ready to transition from middle school to high school. With the changes to middle school, students have to adjust to more responsibility, changing classes, navigating a new school with new teachers, more demanding schoolwork, and discovering a new social atmosphere. Due to this transitional time, it is in an educator's best interest to understand learning in a way that provides flexibility, inclusion, and important learning opportunities for all students. Helping students transition from elementary school to middle school is something that is challenging in every district, and UDL will make this transition smoother for both the students and teachers. Additionally, with the inclusion of UDL practices into the curriculum, the students will get more out of their learning. Your goal at the end of this workshop should be to identify and understand the principles of UDL and know how to apply them to your own classroom. What is UDL, or the Universal Design for Learning? Do not fret if you're unsure. UDL is something that is constantly thrown around as a buzzword. But how many of you really know what UDL entails? It is important for all of us to be on the same page. I'm going to give everyone a quick 5-minute break to introduce yourself to your neighbors and what you teach, as well as brainstorm together what you know about UDL already. Please jot things down on your handout if you are interested. If you're watching this remotely after the workshop, this would be a good place to pause for 5 minutes and reflect. Okay, now that we have discussed and brainstormed UDL, I have a short video for us to watch. I hope you enjoyed the video. I feel like it does a really good job of clearly explaining each UDL principle. Now, I don't want to reiterate this too much, but I just want to go over again the 3 principles of UDL that we just learned. First, we have multiple means of engagement. This means that as an educator, you will need to offer your students options to keep them interested and engaged. You need to be aware of your students' strengths, limitations, and interests. Building relationships in the classroom will really benefit you here. This principle can include highlighting learning goals, changing the physical space to have less distractions, providing opportunity for reflection, and giving your students autonomy and choices within their learning. Next, let's focus on multiple means of representation. This is likely one of the aspects of UDL that you are already familiar with. Representation encompasses the different ways that you show information and the different formats that you may use to highlight specific topics. For example, in an 8th grade health class talking about pregnancy and development, a teacher used to hand out a textbook chapter for students to read. After learning about UDL, she included a chart about development and a video where someone is talking about it, as well as the original textbook chapter she used. Now, each student was able to access the information and learn about the topic. Lastly, we have multiple means of action and expression. This is a vital part of the UDL framework. This tenet suggests that learners have choice in the ways that they want to express what they have learned. At the end of a unit, a student may want to take an exam, create a poster, write an essay, or more to demonstrate their new knowledge. During my own experience in school, I really disliked taking multiple choice exams. I got really nervous and constantly second-guessed my answers. I was relieved when my final was an essay because I was able to express what I had learned in a different way. If my teacher had implemented UDL, my final exams may have looked much different. With UDL, there would have been choices for the way that students could express their knowledge. Here is a chart that I found on the CAST website, which has been extremely helpful to me as a resource. CAST is an organization that has been instrumental with updating and understanding the Universal Design for Learning. I highly recommend checking it out after the workshop. You may have seen it before. If you go to their website, you can find it, and each of the bullet points allows you to interact with the document and learn more. It gets more in depth with each guideline. It is available at udlguidelines.cast.org, so feel free to check it out. I am sure at this point you feel much more confident in your understanding of UDL. The UDL framework has the potential to add a lot of positive things to every classroom in every subject. However, I feel like transparency is important and everyone should understand potential downfalls so that they can be fully informed and prepared to combat them or avoid them. First, let's go over some negatives. Most of these are not set in stone. There is potential for these things to happen, but if you are aware, you can lessen the trouble you will have. UDL, unfortunately, does have the potential to be time-consuming, especially when you first start. It may require a lot of curriculum change or a lot of extra work finding additional documents, rearranging your room, and setting in place any other changes you need to make. Also, it can become expensive. There is technology that is associated with UDL that isn't free. Certain applications and online learning tools like Nearpod or Flocabulary cost money. However, we are lucky that there are also a lot of free tools that we can use. Lastly, there is a possibility of educator error. Not every person who attempts to use the UDL framework actually understands it or knows how to use it. Hopefully, next session you will feel more confident about this part. Next, I will talk about the positives. UDL provides a tremendous flexibility to education and optimizes student learning for all students. It also gives students confidence and allows them to take control and play a part in their own education, which in turn makes them more engaged and makes learning more meaningful. UDL is designed to meet the needs of all students. While it can be a lot of work up front, the payoff is great, and it will really help each student in their transition from elementary school to middle school, or middle school to high school. Finally, using this framework allows students to demonstrate their learning in unique and meaningful ways to them. I hope that brief educational session and overview of the Universal Design for Learning was very helpful for you. Please keep your handouts with you. Before I move on to what we will be doing next time, I just want to give everyone a chance to ask any questions you may have. So here's a good time. We'll pause for 5 minutes. Our next session will be Wednesday right after school at 3 p.m. again. We will briefly go over what we covered today, and then we will talk about ways to implement UDL in your classroom. Thank you again. Welcome to Session 2, Tools for Immediate and Long-Term UDL Implementation. Just a quick review of last time. We talked about the 3 principles of UDL framework, which is engagement, representation, and action and expression. We also talked about some of the major pros and cons of UDL and how to work with them. This session today will help you with implementing UDL in your own classroom. Also, before we jump right into today's topic, I just want to reiterate that when implementing the UDL framework in your own classroom, there are so many different things that you can do that I haven't addressed. And some of the things could be in both long-term or immediate. There isn't really any right or wrong for the time you feel is right for your classroom or your students. Here are some immediate UDL techniques. I'm sure you are sitting here at this workshop thinking that it will take so much time and effort to fully revamp and rejuvenate your curriculum. And yes, it will likely take some extra effort. However, there are things you can do relatively easy starting your next unit. One thing that really helped me personally was to think about starting small. You don't need to rush into fitting it into UDL into every part of your classroom and your lessons. If you've been teaching the way you teach for years, you don't need to do a complete 180. Start small and simple. You could talk to your fellow educators. This doesn't need to be a super formal curriculum map upheaval. It might just be helpful to get perspective from coworkers who may also be interested in changing things in their own classroom. You could also talk to students. You are a middle school teacher to help students learn and navigate middle school. They are the ones you are teaching, and they may have an interesting perspective on what they are interested in, want to see in the classrooms, and more. For example, you may have an end-of-the-year exam that you've been doing for the past 6 years. If you talk to your students, they may surprise you and suggest a project, an essay, or a performance. Talking with your students and taking what they say seriously will help build relationships and help you in the classroom. You can also do your own research. There are hundreds of blogs that talk about UDL and techniques for your classroom. Additionally, the CAST website that I mentioned previously in the workshop has a ton of great resources as well. The next two parts kind of go hand in hand. First, you can make a plan. I can't stress this one enough. When it feels overwhelming and like a lot of things might have to change in your classroom, just remember that everything will go smoother with a plan, and that is something you can do immediately, change as much as you want, and keep your thoughts organized. Lastly, find a goal. When you are making your plan for the UDL framework in your classroom, think about what you are actually wanting to achieve. There's no point in just implementing UDL without understanding exactly why you personally are deciding to utilize the UDL framework in your classroom. Having a goal is a very important step for any changes in the classroom. Long-term implementation. The first thing I would suggest before starting any sort of long-term UDL implementation plan is to have a goal and make a plan. This is something that I also put into the immediate implementation slide, but it belongs here as well. There is no use on doing a complete change in teaching strategy without carefully considering it. A long-term plan could be to redo your classroom in line with UDL principles. You could purchase flexible furniture, arrange your classroom so it's more accessible, have different spaces for different types of activities, make your classroom comfortable, minimize distractions, and more. Think about the types of things you may need to budget for and purchase in the long term. Make a plan with your department. Unlike what I said in the immediate slide, you can sit down and have a formal discussion about how you plan to change your curriculum. Most of these long-term implementation ideas you need to plan ahead for. Having a goal is just important here as it is in the other for a short-term plan. I just want to take a quick pause for a moment right now to let everyone gather their thoughts. Okay, now it is time to address any questions or concerns if you have them. So I'm going to pause for 5 minutes to let everyone ask any questions they might have. Thank you. Next time, your session will be a little bit different. You will have an opportunity to work in and out of your department to discuss UDL changes you might be interested in making in your classroom or with your department. Welcome back to your third and final session of your UDL workshop, Collaboration Stations. So I just want to briefly review what we learned in session 1 and session 2. For session 1, we talked about engagement, representation, action, and expression, and we also discussed the pros and cons of UDL in the classroom. And for session 2, we talked about the importance of having a plan and immediately and long-term implementation of the UDL framework in the classroom. Today we're going to put together everything that you have learned so far in the workshop. Please grab your worksheet for today in front of you. This one is a little different. On one side is your first brainstorming and collaboration note section, and on the other side is your second one. The way it will work is that you will have 15 minutes to talk with a person who is not in your department. This will be a great time to introduce yourself and talk about UDL together. You'll be able to get a unique perspective from someone who teaches something different. You can take notes or discuss anything that feels relevant to you about UDL and implementing it in your classroom. Then, for the next set of 15 minutes, you will work with your department and do the same thing. By the end of today, you should be able to identify the 3 principles of UDL and how you could apply them to your own classroom or department. I'm going to give everyone a few moments to get situated. The first 15 minutes starts now. Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope that was helpful for you. Everyone can now regroup with their departments. I will give you a few moments and then you can begin when you are ready. I just want to once again say thank you so much for coming here these past few days and working together so wonderfully. If you have any other questions, please ask. Now everyone should have a 3-page document detailing UDL highlights and how it can work for your own classroom. Also, just a quick reminder, I will be emailing out a survey after this. I would really appreciate it if you could fill it out and let me know how you felt about the workshop. Additionally, feel free to contact me if you're interested in talking more about UDL or want me to help you get in contact with others who feel interested in learning more. Thank you so much, and I hope to hear from you in the future.